I apologize for the wind. It's been windy over the past few days. I want to talk about something. I don't usually talk about politics that much on here, but watching the Today Show this morning for a little bit, they were talking about the 2016 presidential election and who would run for both sides. For both main sides, that is, being Republican and Democrat. Of course, you're going to have the independents and the Tea Parties and all that, but, you got three people that are kind of like in the spotlight right now. You have this Governor Christie, or whatever his name is, from New Jersey, that's supposed to represent the Republican side of things. And then, of course, you got Mitt Romney, who's a possible Republican candidate for president, along with Governor Christie out of New Jersey. And then, of course, you got Hillary Clinton, which is supposedly going to be the strong Democratic candidate. Well, here's the thing about. Hold on for a second. But anyway, like I was saying, you have Hillary Clinton as the strong Democratic candidate, potentially, a strong potential one. But it seems that's the case, right? So you got Christie, Romney, and Clinton all vying for to be the next president. Now, history has proven that after a Democrat has its tenure as president, that a Republican gets their turn. It has been a proven fact. Proven fact. Take a look at the recent run before. You had Bush, then you had Clinton, then you had Bush, then you had Obama. That's basically how it works. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, we had Reagan, Bush, and they were Republicans. Yes they were. But you see, the thing is, in recent years, in the past 20 years, it's kind of been a back and forth deal. You've had four, basically, essentially, 8-year tenures by each president that I've mentioned. You had one by George W. Bush. You've had one by, you had one by George Bush. You've had one by Bill Clinton. You've had one by George W. Bush, and now you have one by Barack Obama. So the question is, who's next in line for a possible one tenure? So the question is, who's next in line for a possible 4-year tenure, if not 8-year tenure, as President of the United States? Who's next in line? That is the question. Like, who's next in line to be president? Well, like I said, history has proven that the pattern goes from lately, in the past 20 years, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat. So now, you would think, with that kind of a track record, that kind of a pattern, that kind of track record, that you would end up getting a Republican in office, whether it's the Governor Christie guy or Romney or whoever runs, whoever becomes the solitary chosen one of the Republican candidacy to run for president, to represent the Republican Party. Who would be that chosen one? History, through these patterns, would suggest that a Republican is next in line. But then again, you have the historic factor, the let's make history factor. What I mean is, the historic factor could come into play. Because let's not forget, when Barack got elected, it was not just because at the time, and I guess in some ways still connects to this younger current generation, but also the fact that and let's not hide this, the historic reason he was elected was because he was the first African American, first black president we ever had. So that's why. It wasn't just... So that's why people voted for him. It wasn't because of the fact that he connected with the younger generation on a broader scale. Don't get me wrong on that. Don't get me wrong on that. That was one of the obvious reasons. But also because, from a historic standpoint, he would be the first African American president. So you might say, well, now you might ask, well, where does that historic card play into this factor? Hillary Clinton. There's your historical factor. Just like Barack Obama, people voted him in, not just because he connected to the younger generation, but also because he was the first African American to run for president, and they wanted to see how he would do. The same is going to be said for Hillary Clinton. She's the first lady, if you will, to run or to be strongly nominated already 2 years before, or 2.5 years before the 2016 presidential election. She's the first official candidate with a strong backing already. And it's not just because they feel, hey, she's lived in the White House before, she's done this before. She's lived in the White House before, she knows what it takes. She was married to the president. No. What it is, folks, it's not just all of that. It's not just the fact that it's not just the fact of all that. It's that historical standpoint. And it's not also, she'll connect to that younger generation like Barack did. It's not that either. It's the historic standpoint. The historic standpoint would be the reason people would vote for her. Because they would be making history once again by voting in the first lady president. Now, I have no problem with us having a lady president. I don't. But the Clintons' track record is not good. I'd rather have, believe it or not, I know it's going to surprise people, I'd rather have Michelle Obama run for president. I'd rather have Sarah Palin run for president than Hillary Clinton, because despite how you feel about those two and what they've done, you would have to would probably make better lady presidents. Again, like I said, despite how you feel about both of them and what they've done, whether it's positive or negative, you have to admit they would probably be the better choice. But right now, the strong candidacy for the Democratical representative is going straight to Hillary Clinton. And again, it's not because of whether or not she connects with the people, whether or not she understands the current generation, the past generations, the future generations. Not all that. It's a historical standpoint. Again, that's why they voted Barack Obama in. Not just because he connected to the younger generation, which he did. Don't get me wrong on that. It's more along the lines of it was historic because he was the first African American to run for president, and they wanted to make it become a reality. They wanted that to be a reality. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, Brian, he's not really the first African American. What about Jesse Jackson and all that? Yeah, okay, look, there have been African Americans that have ran for president, but they didn't, go as far or go as strong as Barack did. And they didn't have the support that he did. So that, to me, is why he got it, because he had a strong support from a current generation that said, hey, he's young, let's make history, let's put our first African American president in there, let's see what happens. It's basically like an experiment. There's like, ooh, let's see what happens when we press this, or we do this. That's why he was elected. Has he done a good job? Not in the eyes of a lot of people, but he's still, like my mom says, you still got to pray for the guy. But anyway, that is why, again, Hillary Clinton plays into that historical card factor. The fact that her being the first lady presidential candidate for any side is huge. So, to me, history-wise, from a pattern standpoint, you would believe the Republicans have the edge of having a Republican president in office in 2016. But then again, from the historic standpoint, not a pattern standpoint, but from a historic standpoint, you have to also put in that historical wild card of Hillary Clinton making history, just like Barack did, of being the first ever president of not a race, but of a gender. So, but that's just my take on it. Let me know what you guys think. Who do you think you favor? Who do you think has the open range out of all this? Let me know who you think down below, and I'll talk to you.